Did you watch the impeachment hearings today? Wow, bombshell exciting stuff. I sat through most of it. That's my life, apparently. And there's a lot to go through, but there was one exchange that I thought stood out because it illuminates something that's been under-discussed about this entire process. So I'm going to play a clip. It's a tad long, but stick with it, and then I'll be right back with you.
Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, did you discuss the July 25th phone call with anyone outside the White House on July 25th or the 26th? And if so, with whom?
Yes, I did. My core function is to coordinate U.S. government policy, interagency policy, and I spoke to two individuals with regards to providing some sort of readout of the call.
Two individuals that were not in the White House.
Not in the White House, cleared U.S. government officials with appropriate need to know.
And what agencies were these officials with?
Department of State, Deputy Assistant Secretary George Kent, who is responsible for the portfolio Eastern Europe, including Ukraine, and a individual from the office of an individual in the intelligence community.
As you know, the intelligence community has 17 different agencies. What agency was this individual from?
If I could interject here, we don't want to use these proceedings.
It's our time,
I know,
Mr. Chair.
but we need to protect the whistleblower.
Please stop.
I want to make sure that there's no effort to out the whistleblower through the use of these proceedings. If the witness has a good faith belief that this may reveal the identity of the whistleblower, that is not the purpose that we are here for, and I want to advise the witness accordingly.
Mr. Vindman, you testified in your deposition that you did not know the whistleblower.
Ranking member, it's Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, please.
Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, you testified in the deposition that you did not know who the whistleblower was or is.
I do not know who the whistleblower is. That is
So how is it possible for you to name these people and then out the whistleblower?
Per the advice of my counsel, I've been advised not to answer specific questions about members of the intelligence community.
Are you aware that this is the Intelligence Committee that's conducting an impeachment hearing?
Of course I am.
Wouldn't the appropriate place for you to come to testify would be the Intelligence Committee about someone within the intelligence community?
Ranking member, per the advice of my counsel and the instructions from the chairman, I've been advised not to provide any specifics on who I have spoken to inside the intelligence community. What I can offer is that these were properly cleared individuals, or was a properly cleared individual with a need to know.
So let's get this straight. Whatever you may think of Devin Nunez, he's onto something here. And by the way, Devin Nunez got totally pilloried throughout the entire Trump-Russia investigation / ordeal as being somehow a crank and being a reflexive Trump defender, and there might be some truth there in some sense. But if you compare his record to that of Adam Schiff, it's not even arguable that he was exponentially more correct about everything that transpired there. So I think he's actually established a better reputation than you would ascertain if you just watch the popular media portrayals of him. And that's all apart from whether you agree with him on just sort of run-of-the-mill political issues, whether domestically or in terms of foreign policy, and I generally would not. But that's irrelevant in terms of his empirical lines of questioning here, whether with respect to the Russia episode or this current episode. So what did he do? He asked Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, which apparently he demands he must be addressed with his full formal title at all times, which is, not the most humble thing in the world. But anyway, he simply asked Vindman, with whom he spoke about the now infamous or famous blah, blah, blah phone call in July of this year that Trump had with the president of Ukraine. Would seem like a reasonable question. If you're having public impeachment hearings where the whole purpose is to elucidate the facts which could give rise to the impeachment of the president, the most consequential constitutional oversight maneuver available, then you'd want all the facts fleshed out for the public record. One of those facts would be, you'd think, to whom did Vindman, I'll call him Mr. Vindman because I feel I don't need to formalize this YouTube video. With whom did Mr. Vindman speak about his apparent concerns over the Trump-Zelensky phone call? And Vindman replies that he spoke to somebody in the intelligence community. Now, what might that mean? That could mean, as Nunez pointed out, a lot of different things, because the intelligence community is a multifaceted network of individuals who have some competing interests, but in a way, an overriding ideological disposition. But Vindman, apparently on the advice of his counsel, says he cannot provide any information about with whom he communicated in the intelligence community. Now, just step back for a second. These are public impeachment hearings. To repeat, they are intended to elucidate for the public all the pertinent facts relevant to whether the president ought to be impeached. And yet Vindman, his counsel, and also Adam Schiff are asserting that facts must nonetheless be concealed on the ground that they could potentially reveal the quote-unquote whistleblower. But Nunez raised a fair point there, which is that if you're claiming you don't know who the whistleblower is, then how can you cite a aversion to disclosing the whistleblower's identity when you don't know who it is? So he's asking who you communicated with. If you don't know who the whistleblower is, then that should not, then a belief that the whistleblower should not be outed should not prevent you from answering that question, because you have no conscious knowledge of the identity of the whistleblower. And I think the Republican fixation on the identity of the whistleblower is probably a little bit overstated. I mean, it doesn't matter all that much in terms of the substance of what is being alleged having to do with Trump. But it is still obviously newsworthy, and it's in the public interest for that information to become available, because the intelligence community, factions within it, have obviously taken upon themselves to oppose Trump in a variety of respects, some of which have far exceeded the ordinary standards around what quote-unquote norms are supposed to govern the conduct of the intelligence community, and that stretches back even to before Trump entered office. So if we even just want a historical record available to us, we should want that information. The New York Times has already said that this whistleblower, quote-unquote, was with the CIA. So if the CIA or somebody associated with it, factions within it, whatever the case may be, initiated a process that could culminate in the impeachment of the president, yes, I want to be apprised of that information, and so should you, and so should everybody, including members of Congress. But apparently the intelligence community now, even in the context of a public impeachment hearing, is immunized from all transparency. Because we can't out the supposed whistleblower, even though anybody with an internet connection can look up the name of this individual. Of course, it hasn't been confirmed that the one that people on Twitter say is the whistleblower is actually him. But, it seems rather plausible. Also, consider the utter strangeness of this impeachment inquiry, and at least this public phase, being conducted within the intelligence community. I mean, that's never how it's worked. The Judiciary Committee are the ones that draft articles of impeachment. But now that we have it taking place in the Intelligence Committee, run by Adam Schiff, it means that spurious invocations of national security or whatever can be used to conceal information that would be reasonably described as pertinent, such as who did Vindman talk to in the intelligence community about the phone call. So because it's in the intelligence community, there's sort of like a built-in excuse. National security, classified information, sensitive information, etc. When various players don't want to be forthright about the information that's in their possession. And that's something that really hasn't even been discussed. Have you heard anybody discuss that aspect of all this? I sure haven't. But that's why I'm here to provide you with alternative facts that maybe you not hear if you just glaze in front of CNN for several hours watching all this go down. And then the other thing with Vindman, this is sort of a different issue, but I'm not even going to bother finding the clip for this because it was so ubiquitous. But, he over and over again is commended for his familial background, and he referenced how he was brought to the United States from the Soviet Union as a young age, and he achieved the American dream and served in the military and is only following his conscience now and taking this public role as a Trump antagonist. And all this has the function now of, like I mentioned in a past video, interweaving this Ukraine matter with larger themes of American mythology. So because America is such an exceptional nation, Vindman came here and made a great life and his parents sacrificed, all of which may be true to some degree. But by putting it so front and center, they sort of exalt Vindman as this exemplar of the American dream. And that sort of inoculates him from any accusations that he could be acting with a political motive. And is he acting with a partisan motive? Probably not. That's probably not his personal style. But somebody who's in the position he's in is obviously going to have a certain set of political suppositions that maybe don't manifest as partisan in an overt way, meaning not Republican or Democrat. But nonetheless, if you're attached to the national security state bureaucracy, that is going to inevitably imbue you with certain political beliefs about the utility of the institution that you're in. So he's not just this neutral actor, right? But nobody can really examine that on any substantive level because, he's has this wonderful story. And of course, coming from the Soviet Union adds a whole nother dimension to this because it sort of makes Trump out to be somebody who is furthering the interests of Russia by being so mean to somebody who in the past fled, Soviet repression or what have you. So one thing I'm watching for in all these hearings is how the themes of American exceptionalism get invoked to present the Ukraine scandal as extra important and extra damning for Trump. And most of the commentators are just obviously totally oblivious to that, or in a way actively furthering that narrative. Alrighty, that'll do it for now. Talk to you later.